This is Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. I'm Pia Ontiveros. Tonight on the program, more Omicron cases detected as new COVID-19 infections rise to over 17,000 today. The Makati city government shuts down Berjaya Hotel over an alleged breach in quarantine protocols, and COMELEC trims down further the number of aspirants in the upcoming elections. 29 more Omicron variant cases are detected in the country. The health department says 19 are local infections with addresses in Metro Manila, while 10 involve returning overseas Filipinos. This comes as the daily case count rises to over 17,000. The positivity rate also jumps to a new record high of 36.9%. While active cases are now at more than 56,000. Experts remind the public to continue observing health protocols as they don't see the numbers going down anytime soon.
Dadagdagan pa yan, posibleng dumoble pa yan, aabotin mga 20,000 plus. Pero ayun nga, kung susundan natin yung South Africa experience at dahil marami na tayong bakunado, may chance na pagdating ng kalagitnaan ng January, doon na natin makikita yung peak at magsisimula ng bumaba.
The health department already sees the Omicron possibly spreading in communities, driving the exponential increase in COVID cases. But can antibodies from Omicron infection really be considered a natural vaccine?
Omicron is a natural vaccine. It's now going to spread throughout our population, and it's going to find everyone who is vulnerable because of either waning immunity or unvaccinated status.
What does Octa Research Fellow and molecular biologist Father Nicanor Austriaco mean by that? He explains to CNN Philippines, based on a preprint study, unlike the other variants, an infection from Omicron could help the body create protection against COVID for the unvaccinated and against all existing variants of concern for the vaccinated.
Delta did not protect against Beta, while the Omicron variant would protect you for breakthrough infections against all of the other variants as well.
But he says this doesn't excuse anyone from protecting themselves from getting COVID or from getting vaccinated.
The danger is we do not know if you will survive Omicron. No matter what, we must be vaccinated and boosted and do all that we can to prevent being infected.
For Dr. Ronjin Solante, like Delta and other variants, a person infected by Omicron will develop natural protection, but this will not last long.
There's no such thing as a lifelong protection. Eventually, your antibody will also wane, even if you are infected.
He adds, there's no assurance if it could fight new variants in the future.
But what we know is that when you have Omicron, because of this massive infection of Omicron, will create a herd immunity among the population.
Dr. Eric Tayag, meanwhile, cautions fellow experts from making confusing statements. He says there's still a lot to learn about Omicron.
Baka ma-misinterpret na sige magpahawa-hawa na tayo para mag-end na yung pandemic. Omicron cannot be called a natural vaccine.
While most Omicron cases are mild, Tayag claims people could still be hospitalized and die.
Di ba meron tayong long-term COVID? Ba't ka magbabaka sakali na? Yes, mild ngayon, pero mamaya may long-term pa rin yun. Hanggat maaari huwag kang magpapahawa o huwag kang manghahawa.
Austriaco says a milder COVID-19 infection signals the start of the end of the pandemic. And Solante insists the way to it is still vaccinating everyone.
If everybody is vaccinated and everybody is boosted, so there will be no room for a mutation that will make it more harmful.
Caroline Bongkin, CNN Philippines.
Alert Level 3 takes effect in Laguna tomorrow because of rising COVID-19 cases. The Provincial Health Office says active cases reached 469 yesterday, up from just 22 cases last December 28. Aside from Laguna, Metro Manila, Bulacan, Cavite, and Rizal are also under Alert Level 3 until January 15. Under this alert level, the capacity of restaurants and other indoor establishments are limited. Face-to-face classes as well as contact sports are prohibited. Only those aged 18 to 65 are allowed to leave their homes. Seniors above 65 years old should be fully vaccinated to be able to go out. The Makati city government shuts down Berjaya Hotel over an alleged breach in quarantine protocols. But in a statement, the hotel management questions the closure order, saying it has no legal basis. Berjaya says the tourism department's suspension order is not yet final and that they're given 15 days to appeal the decision. It adds there is no law penalizing a hotel for not reporting a guest who skips quarantine and that due process must be observed. Meanwhile, authorities assure the public that there are enough policemen to guard and monitor compliance of quarantine hotels to health protocols. Stanley Gahete filed this report.
The Philippine National Police is ready to deploy additional personnel this week if necessary in response to President Rodrigo Duterte's order to increase police presence and visibility. This is to prevent incidents of individuals keeping mandatory isolation in quarantine hotels and facilities. In an interview, PNP Chief General Leonardo Carlos says 1,632 police officers have been deployed to different accredited quarantine facilities to make random inspection prior to President's order.
Hindi tayo magkukulang kasi this is not the peak of our fight against COVID. We still have our reserve RSSF, yung reserve standby force. So if kailangan na magbawas kami ng personnel to be in the admin work, we can do that and deploy them.
Carlos says 2 police officers are assigned to guard every 12 hours with at least 4 officers per facility. Currently, there are 408 accredited hotels and quarantine facilities in Metro Manila and selected areas in different regions. About 9,000 individuals are currently being monitored to ensure that all of them will comply to quarantine rules and health protocols.
During the admission, so meron po silang pinipilapan na admission form. Doon po nakasaad yung mga rules and regulation ng quarantine facility.
Yung monitoring po natin, meron tayong umaga, tanghali at gabi.
People also agree beefing up police presence to help contain the spread of COVID-19.
Aware po ako na may gwardya magbabantay sa kanila para hindi sila tularan ng mga nakaraan may tumakas.
While police presence is also needed in checkpoints in areas under granular lockdowns, Carlos says deploying additional cops to man quarantine facilities won't be a burden to PNP and that peace and security won't be compromised either.
Our efforts on the anti-crime, anti-drug, all others, may specific focus unit kami. So ito pong additional lang itong ating nasa quarantine hotels.
The PNP chief also suggests designating a common help desk per quarantine facility to easily monitor the move of all guests. For him, this is not just a PNP task, but a holistic approach where everyone should participate to help fight the surging COVID cases. Stanley Gahete, CNN Philippines.
Police also remind travelers going to Metro Manila and Bulacan to always bring their vaccination cards.
Kung kayo magtaka, if our police personnel will ask for your vaccine cards as a requirement upon entry sa mga LGU tulad ng Bulacan and other Metro Manila area. Alinsunod po ito sa pinapatupad na mandato sa kanilang mga lugar to limit the movement of people, especially sa LGUs placed under Alert Level 3. In behalf of our Chief PNP, humingi po kami ng pangunawa sa mga motorista kung sakaling hindi kayo papasukin sa mga border checkpoint in the absence of the vaccination card. Ganun po talaga ang instruction sa mga personnel natin. This is for the good of the general public.
Security Group Commander Randolph Cabangbang says 15 personnel tested positive for the coronavirus. All are fully vaccinated and asymptomatic. Cabangbang adds the 76-year-old chief executive was not exposed to these cases. Malacanang earlier said protocols are in place to protect the president. Meanwhile, another cabinet member undergoes quarantine after exposure to someone with the coronavirus. Tourism Secretary Berna Romulo Puyat says she has received her booster shot and will work from home until she gets medical clearance on the 10th day after contact. Health Secretary Francisco Duque, Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana, and vaccine czar Carlito Galvez are also under quarantine after exposure to COVID-positive staff and household members. A lawmaker wants households to receive a one-time 15,000 peso cash assistance from the government if they are fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Quezon City Representative Alfred Vargas filed the Ayuda sa Bakuna Act, seeking to encourage vaccination and help reach herd immunity. The proposed financial aid will come from the Social Welfare Department in addition to its other assistance programs. Vargas expects the measure to reach deliberations when sessions resume this month.
The Aklan provincial government is bringing back the swab test.
Omicron variant. Beginning Sunday, January 9th, tourists and returning locals will again need to present negative RT-PCR test results before entering the province, which has the world-famous Boracay Island. They must attach the results within 72 hours of their date of travel when filling up the online health declaration card at touristboracay.com or aklan.gov.ph. Swab tests were waived in November in a bid to boost local tourism. Coming up on Newsnight, presidential aspirants now down to 11 in the full body's latest list of 2022 hopefuls. And some survivors of Typhoon Odette still homeless and in the dark 3 weeks after its onslaught. More on recovery efforts when we return. Stay tuned. 15.
Welcome back to
Tentative list of presidential candidates for the 2022 polls. From the previous 15 last month, only 11 aspirants remain in the running, including former Senator Bongbong Marcos, who faces multiple petitions against his bid. His namesake, Maria Aurora Marcos, did not make the cut, as well as 3 others deemed nuisance candidates. Other names still in the lineup are former Malacanang spokesman Ernie Abella, former Defense Secretary Norberto Gonzales, Dr. Jose Montemayor, as well as Vice President Leni Robredo, Manila Mayor Isko Moreno, Senators Ping Lacson and Manny Pacquiao, and Labor leader Yodi de Guzman. The 9 vice presidential aspirants in COMEX's tentative list remain, while the poll body struck down 6 senatorial hopefuls, leaving the number of contenders for the magic 12 to 64. The poll body is expected to release a final list of all 2022 candidates tomorrow. The camp of Bongbong Marcos commends the COMEX for declaring the presidential aspirants' namesakes as nuisance candidates. Apart from Maria Aurora Marcos, the poll body also struck down the candidacy of Tiburcio Marcos. Now on to other presidential aspirants. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno rolls out drive-through booster vaccination for delivery drivers in his city. Vice President Leni Robredo says almost half of those who availed of a free COVID-19 testing service today turned out positive for the virus. More than 370 results came out positive out of the 800 samples taken from her swab cab program in Quezon City. Senator Ping Lacson this morning said he has yet to receive his COVID test results 40 hours after he underwent RT-PCR testing. Lacson has been under self-isolation since Tuesday after being exposed to his son. Labor leader Yodi de Guzman slams President Duterte after the chief executive said he would never apologize for the deaths under his bloody drug war. Yodi says Mr. Duterte failed to fight illegal drugs and corruption during his term. And Senator Manny Pacquiao commends the Philippine Sports Commission for mediating to solve the rift between star pole vaulter E.J. Obiena and the Philippine Athletics Track and Field Association. Retired boxer says he's ready to help sort things out between the two parties, as he calls Obiena a national treasure. Some experts are warning the public about unofficial election surveys making rounds online. They say these surveys are fake and manipulated. More from Sandy Gahente.
Longtime voter Reynard Francisco says his day is not complete without checking his social media accounts and participating in several unofficial election 2022 surveys.
I-like kung ito si kandidato mo, i-heart kung ito yung kandidato mo, ihaha kung ito yung kandidato mo. Oo, kasi fun masaya very interactive. Pero doon mo makikita parang yung hakutan ng mga supporters
Reynard admits online polls are unfair.
Pag titignan mo yung mga member, yung mga nag-react, minsan kakagawa lang ng account last month. Alam mo yun, kahit social media siya, parang pati yun, nakakaroon ng manipulasyon ng dayaan. So, nakakapikon.
Same as what official organizations do when conducting polls, probability sampling aims to represent the majority by randomly selecting samples from the whole population. This is the meaning of statistics. However, simply like in Pulse Online, aims to merely know public pulses. That is, if all participants are real account owners. Statistician Jose Ramon Albert says, unofficial and false polls online could distort facts, especially when participants are those with fake accounts. Such online surveys do not contribute to intelligent awareness of people on elections and social issues.
Kung gusto nating makuha yung medyo reliable estimate of how much is going to go for one candidate or another, no? Kailangan medyo pag-iisipan mo yung design at yung implementation ng survey. Ang problema mo sa mga internet survey, mga Facebook, minsan kung ano ng mga pages, is that they will be only representing the people who actually gave their votes.
Tech expert Art Samaniego says social media is transforming public discourse and could be used to influence voters' decision, especially since polls here can be manipulated.
Napakadaling bumili ng likes, napakadaling bumili ng reactions. Ang delikado kasi sa social media, pwede kang i-target o pwede i-target yung segment ng society na kung gusto kong maabot.
For 23-year-old and first-time voter Renz, unofficial polls online offers nothing but social division.
It's a very superficial way to get the opinion of people na nasa online, especially Facebook. Definitely not. Lalo ngayon na uso yung trolls online and madaming fake accounts.
Experts discourage the public to participate on false polls available online.
Kung ano yung paniniwala mo, yun lang yung makikita at maririnig mo, no? Yun yung danger doon kasi akala mo lahat ng nakikita mo sa Facebook, yun lang yun. Pero actually the world is much larger than your Facebook friends.
Stanley Guedes, CNN Philippines.
Victims of Typhoon Odette are still on the long road to recovery from the massive devastation that struck them 3 weeks ago. Until now, there is still insufficient electricity supply in provinces like Bohol.
And when you don't have power, you also don't have water because the water refilling stations are not working.
In the island of Siargao in Surigao del Norte, many residents are still in evacuation centers.
The real problem now is the roofing or the shelter for the people. Most of the families who are not in the evacuation center are taking shelter in the makeshift houses that are not conducive to living.
The Office of Civil Defense says distribution of aid is ongoing while damage to agriculture and infrastructure is pegged at almost 25 billion pesos.
Itong dalawang region ang pinaka-focus natin, Caraga and Central Visayas. Papunta na yan sa drafting ng Comprehensive Rehabilitation Recovery Plan. And we hope to present to the full council of the NDRRMC the draft by February 18.
Catch the replays of the special edition of The Source, Odette Aftermath, Road to Recovery at 7:30 this evening, only here on CNN Philippines. In news overseas, 13 million people in the Chinese city of Xi'an now entering their third week of a strict lockdown to curb the country's largest COVID-19 outbreak yet. With the Winter Olympics less than a month away, keeping the coronavirus from spreading further is a top priority. But as CNN's Chrissy Rousseau tells us, the harsh rules are making daily life extremely difficult for many.
我来大姨妈了，也没有卫生巾。
No eye contact from this anti-pandemic worker as a woman under lockdown pleads for a basic essential and her dignity. Through tears, she says, "My period came yesterday. I called the hotline, the police, CDC, but no one responded." CNN can't confirm the authenticity of the video. Residents in the Chinese city of Xi'an, which has seen the largest community outbreak of COVID-19 since Wuhan, say they continue to struggle to get basic supplies and food. The municipal government concedes that there are some problems and said it's working on improving the situation. Since December the 23rd, this city of 13 million has been under strict lockdown. Residents are forbidden from leaving their homes unless it's for a COVID test. There has been public shaming of people accused of breaching COVID-19 safety laws, and a man was beaten by government COVID prevention workers for breaching lockdown. The workers were later punished after this footage emerged online. In Xi'an, there are instances of people being turned away from hospital because of COVID protocols. In a disturbing video, a pregnant woman was allegedly turned away because she didn't have a valid COVID-19 test. And according to the post from a Weibo user who claims to be her niece, the woman is seen sitting outside the hospital with a pool of blood around her feet. Hours later, she was finally admitted, but ultimately suffered a miscarriage. A staff member from Xi'an Gaoxin Hospital told CNN they were investigating the incident and that the hospital had initially turned away the woman in accordance with the government's COVID-19 rules. Officials have vowed to achieve community zero COVID before lifting the lockdown. In many ways, China's zero COVID policy has been a huge success. It has curbed local outbreaks and saved lives with mass testing and tracing, snap lockdowns and travel restrictions. But in Xi'an, patience has been pushed to the limit. The Eurasia Group placed China's zero COVID policy at the top of its list of global risks for 2022, anticipating a cycle of infections, lockdowns, disruption, and discontent that would rock the global economy. The Winter Games will pose a big test to China's strategy. Experts say people in China are vulnerable because of their lack of exposure to the Omicron variant, the lower efficacy of its homegrown vaccines, and the limits of zero COVID. Even in China, will there ever be any zero COVID?
I don't think so. Actually, to live with COVID is actually the direction to go.
In Xi'an, the number of new cases is decreasing, but desperation is growing as the lockdown enters a third week. Christy Lu Stout, CNN, Hong Kong.
When we come back on Newsnight, we're going to have to wait a little bit longer for basketball games, with the PBA suspending them indefinitely. And from the hard court to amusement parks, we give you updates on temporary shutdowns and reopenings after the break.
Basketball players are staying off court for now, with the PBA postponing games indefinitely. The league says it does not want to endanger the lives of those in the community amid the rise in COVID-19 cases. All scrimmages are also suspended, even if team practices are permitted for areas under Alert Level 2. And on the tennis court, 9-time Australian Open champion Novak Djokovic may not be able to defend his title after Australia canceled his visa. The Serbian athlete, who is not vaccinated, traveled to the country after receiving a medical exemption from the competition's COVID-19 vaccination rules, a decision that provoked backlash among locals. The Australian Open is set to begin January 17th. Well, here's one for thrill seekers. If you've missed going to amusement parks, Star City is set to reopen next Friday. The Pasay City venue closed back in October 2019 following an hours-long fire that damaged attractions in the park. The amusement park will again be open from 2 to 10 p.m. every day with the so-called Star Passes available online at 400 pesos each. But while one door has opened, another is closed. The Enchanted Kingdom in Laguna is temporarily shutting down because of the COVID-19 surge, at least until January 16. Management says this is for the safety of guests and staff. Music's biggest night is postponed yet again because of the surge in COVID-19 cases. The 64th Grammy Awards was originally scheduled for January 31st in Los Angeles. No word yet on when or if the show will still take place. The 2021 Grammys were also pushed back because of COVID-19 and then held mostly outdoors and with a limited audience. Another big event also canceled, this time the film industry. The Sundance Film Festival's in-person program is no longer pushing through because of fears surrounding the Omicron variant. Organizers moved the entire event online from the initial hybrid setup of virtual and face-to-face. And that is it for tonight. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
RPN, Radio Philippines Network Incorporated, DXKO. 13 sa Zinday Utso sa Dayan sa inyong radyo. RPN DXKO, ang Radyo Ronda, dili sa Dakbayan sa Cagayan de Oro. Sibiyahan na may galaong sa katawhan, andang na serbisyo sa tanan. Ang RPN DXKO Radyo Ronda, sakop sa KBP, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
Just begun, but the Commission on Elections' hands are already full amid new developments 4 months before the 2022 elections. On top of the agenda, the final list of candidates to be announced this week, shrugging off the standard-bearer Les Duterte-led PDP Laban faction's request to reopen the filing of certificates of candidacy. Also on the table, the preliminary conference on the disqualification case filed by the Akbayan Party list against presidential aspirant and survey frontrunner Ferdinand Marcos Jr. With COMELEC Chairman Sheriff Abbas and 2 commissioners stepping down next month and the recent rise in COVID-19 cases again stoking fears, what should Filipinos expect come May 2022? Good evening, I'm Pia Ontiveros. Welcome to your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. We apologize for coming in a little bit late. We've had a little bit of technical difficulty, but anyway, our first guest tonight, Commission on Election spokesperson James Jimenez. Good evening, I was about to say Commissioner, Spokesman Jimenez. Let's begin with this. That petition to reopen yung filing ng COC that happened last October, first week of October 1 to 8. Pagbibigyan ba yan ng COMELEC?
Sorry about that. Good evening, Pia, again. Medyo unlikely na mapagbigyan yan, ano? Kasi masyadong maraming konsekwensya yung pagpapa-reopen ng ating filing ng COC. Remember, just apart from the fact na ang haba-haba na ng binigay na period for filing COCs, kung uulitin mo yan ngayon, hindi naman isang partido lang ang magte-take advantage niyan eh. Lahat. So basically, yung buong October 1 to 8, parang inulit mo na rin. Which also means lahat ng screening na ginawa natin from October 8 up to this point, parang baliwala. Kasi magkakaroon ka ng panibagong mga aplikante, bagong filing eh. So, ang daming epekto niyan, no? Down the road. Sabi nga nung mismong petition, humihingi din sila ng postponement ng filing ng balota. And that would probably be a logical conclusion of that. So, makikita mo kung gaano karami ang gagalaw na mga activities ng COMELEC dahil dyan.
And of course, that will push back the schedule of the polls itself, which is the object or the target of this motion to postpone until 2025. Is that something that the COMELEC will even consider? Pag-uusapan pa rin ba yun sa isang NPAC session? In other words, are you going to devote time and energy to that, to considering that petition?
Well, of course, it will have to be discussed. But again, as I said, my reading of the commission is that this is unlikely to pass.
All right. Itong final list of candidates, no, this is going to come out when? January 7 ba?
January 7 ang target po natin, and we're still on track for that.
All right. And the final list of party list candidates already out, and final na yan, wala nang babaguhin dyan kahit ano pang sabihin ng iba pang party list groups.
Unfortunately, wala na po. Yan na po yung ating nilabas na listahan at yan na po ang susundin natin.
Okay. This petition to disqualify former Senator Bongbong Marcos, there are spokesperson James Jimenez, a total of 6 cases filed against Senator Bongbong, but the second one, filed by Tiburcio, a so-called Tiburcio Marcos, was already cancelled or was already dismissed, correct?
It has already been denied. Denied. Dismissed na po yan. So, okay. Marami na rin na-dismiss. 2-3 na ata ang na-dismiss. Yung kay Lihay-Lihay and then itong kay Tiburcio.
All right. And of course, everyone is looking, like you were saying right before the show, the entire COMELEC preparing for the January 7 preliminary conference on the Akbayan DQ case against BBM. This is interesting. No? This is the first time na mala-live stream ang isang COMELEC deliberation. Is that right? And why?
First time po ito at sa tingin ko sa pananaw ng division, mas makakabuti sa proseso kung marami makakita kung ano yung mga pag-uusapan. No? The division wants to have maximum transparency in this particular case so that the people will not be left questioning what happened. So magkakaroon tayo ng live stream. Again, as you said, for the first time.
All right. At may threat pa si Commissioner Guanzon, that she throw in jail anyone who will be in contempt, who she will find in contempt. At sabi pa niya, 48 hours pa raw.
Yes. Yeah. Usually, ang contempt, may contempt powers naman talaga ang COMELEC, and 48 hours is the usual period of confinement pag nako-contempt.
Okay. And syempre, like she said, no, dapat yung mga abogado daw, both sides, sabi niya, to come prepared.
Dapat best behavior, Ms. Pia.
Best behavior and prepared. Dapat lang. Anyway, James Jimenez, we're going to speak to you again on the show a little later in the final stretch, but we'll be taking a very quick break for now. Stay tuned. This is Politics as Usual. The tandem of Senator Ping Lacson and Senator Tito Soto say the Senate can elect a new leader who will serve as acting president if the 2022 elections will be postponed. Joining us tonight is Senator Amy Marcos, chairperson of the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation on this and much more. And of course, needless to say, she is, of course, the sister of former Senator Bongbong Marcos. Ang dami pwedeng pag-isapan. Buti na lang, ang ganda ng timing ni Senator Amy na mag-guest sa show. So, Senator Amy, let's begin with this, no? Dahil ang pinag-usapan kanina with James is ay mga kaso na against sa kapatid mo. So, let's talk about that first. There are, 6 cases, 1 down, 5 to go. In the long run, what do you think really is going to happen to all these cases against you?
Yes, of course, I've been working with the COMELEC very closely since I became a senator and the chairman of the electoral reform. So firstly, let me say that I trust in the COMELEC's fairness, and I am certain that the rule of law will prevail at the end of all that. On the other hand, let me also say that I think it is most important that we allow the will of the people to be heard. Sundan natin ang kagustuhan ng taong bayan sapagkat itong mga sinasabi nga nila, mga kaso, mga technical obstacles that are being put in the way may eventually result in an assault on the credibility of the electoral process. That would be the worst thing that could possibly happen, resulting in instability in already very anxious times.
Mm-hmm. So you are, Senator Amy, if I'm not mistaken, you are for the holding of the May 9, 2022 elections and no postponement, no moving of the election calendar whatsoever.
Yes, as President Duterte has said repeatedly, the elections on May 9 will proceed in accordance with law and with the Constitution. And I think it must be so. Certainly, any effort to derail that schedule, which the COMELEC cannot even postpone, not even a new law can change that because it is written very clearly in our Constitution. Anything that endangers that will be in violation of the Constitution. Nabubuhay tuloy ang kung ano-anong chismis at haka-haka na may isisingit daw ng mga bagong kandidato. Bakit hindi naman linagay noon pa? There was such a long period, as Mr. Jimenez has stated. Why wasn't it filed at that point during the timely period? At nabubuhay tuloy ang nakakatakot na multo ng Noel or no election na ayaw natin na mangyari. Higit sa lahat, many of those on the administration side have said to me, hindi ba marami naman ang administration candidate. We are one political family, even if there are many candidates today. And like every family, there are grudges, there are hurts, there are roiling resentments even. But instead of dragging them to COMELEC and the courts and confusing people, why is it that we just do not talk about it like a family around the kitchen table? It is a family, after all, that surrounds the president, and there are no sins that cannot be forgiven in this kind of political family. Siguro, as the Pope said in his Christmas message, it is time for dialogue, for transparency, for openness, and a generous heart.
No sins that cannot be forgiven. What exactly are you referring to, Senator Amy?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, you said no sins that cannot be forgiven. What exactly are you referring to?
Well, marami kasing nagsasabi na iba-ibang paksyon na nagkasakitan na, nagkasalitaan na ng masakit, may mga maanghang na salita na nabitawan. Wala namang problema yun, di ba? Tiisan tayo lahat. At the end of the day, we all fully support the president, his agenda, and the continuance of his exemplary projects and programs.
Mm-hmm. Senator Amy, I know you said earlier na in no way should or can the elections on May 9, 2022 be postponed. However, if that theory of a scenario of the Noel situation happens, even without an election, si Ping Lacson and Tito Sen, Tito Soto have said na posible pa naman magkaroon ng acting president dahil meron pa rin beyond June 30, 2022, meron pa rin 12 senador. And one of them is you, who are incumbent until June 30, 2025. So if that situation happens, yung 12 senador na yon na incumbent ay pwedeng mag-elect ng Senate President who can be acting president. That is in the law anyway, right? In the Constitution, so it is possible.
Yes, theoretically, what would occur then is that succession law, or the laws on who will succeed the president in the event of a vacuum, will take place. And hindi na election law, kundi succession ang magte-take over dahil hindi nagkaroon ng election. This is something that we really do not want to happen, but
Yes.
Theoretically, indeed, this could occur. And any of the senators who are able to sit until 2025 could possibly be elected as Senate President. Pero sana hindi ito mangyari. Alam na natin na napakahirap ng panahon. Meron pang Omicron ulit, na COVID na tayo, pagkatapos tinamaan pa ng Odette at sari-saring ng mga pinsala. This is really the time for credible and strong and united leadership. We simply cannot afford to defer the election against the Constitution.
Agreed. The elections must push through May 9, 2022. Your brother, former Senator Bongbong Marcos, has been doing very well in pre-campaign surveys. Do you think this is going to hold when the campaign, whatever form it takes, depending on the pandemic? Will this kind of survey ranking still hold during the campaign?
Well, as I've said before, these surveys come as a complete, if pleasant, surprise to all of us. We are humbled by the extraordinary support that my brother has received. But like you said, anything can happen in an election. And certainly, this is the first national election we are conducting under pandemic conditions. Even the COMELEC, it's still a work in progress, exactly what will be done and what will be allowed, because the Omicron, for example, has become a game changer and has literally become so infectious that perhaps these campaign activities that we are so traditionally accustomed to cannot be embarked upon any longer.
And of course, everybody's hoping for a good voter turnout, kahit papaano. But like you said, COMELEC still working on this para nga matuloy at hindi ma-frustrate ang will ng taong bayan. But I wanted to ask also, because you say your brother's performance in the surveys has come as a pleasant surprise to you. But what do you think? I'm sure you guys, your family has been talking about this, the campaign, the Marcos Duterte campaign. Why is he doing well in pre-campaign surveys? Is it because there is this so-called nostalgia for the Marcos years, which, marami ding galit sa ganoon, yung mga people who don't like you, who don't like your family, don't believe in your father. Is it, as one analyst has said, is it democracy fatigue? Pagod na ang tao sa demokrasya, which is kind of insulting also to your family, because parang they think that you are anti-democratic, right? Or is it also the feeling, is it a Pinoy thing na ang gusto ng tao mag-ama na presidente? So may Diosdado Macapagal, Victoria Macapagal, or mag-ina na naging Pangulo, may Cory Aquino, may Noynoy Aquino. What is it? Why is he doing so well in surveys?
Well, I think perhaps there is some nostalgia for a simpler and more prosperous time. We've been through a hellish 20-odd months, and no one can be blamed for wishing things were better. On the other hand, I truly believe that history judges you over the long haul. And the long haul has been almost 40 years. Biglang siguro na re-realize rin natin at napapakinabangan pa rin natin lahat ang mga iba't ibang project ng tatay ko. Biglang naaalala. For example, central to the effort against COVID has really been the fight in the medical sphere. And so many of the hospitals, very simply, were set up during my dad's administration, even the RITM for infectious tropical disease, even the different lung, kidney, heart centers. Suddenly, they've become center stage, particularly the PGH, for example, where my mother was so deeply involved.
Senator Amy, I can hear ngayon pa lang plenty of reactions, both good and bad to what you're saying right now. But we're running out of time, so I'm going to make this as short as possible. No,
But I totally understand that. I am simply not the best judge. I am hardly, hardly detached. So I think some better political analysts should analyze what's happening exactly now. As I said time and again, this has come as a surprise to us, no matter how pleasant.
Okay. Another surprise, of course, political surprise, is that, syempre, people are saying talagang namamayagpag ang mga Marcos because your son Matthew running for re-election as governor of Ilocos Norte, Sandro Marcos, Bongbong's son running for congressman, and both running against a Fariñas, no? So Matthew being challenged by Manong Rudy Fariñas, Sandro running against Ria Fariñas, and then you're practically knocking at the gates of Malacanang. Was there this, and very quickly, I know we don't have time. Was there this conscious effort by your family, because a lot of people claim this is what you did, no, to rebrand yourself so that you would be, that you could get back into Philippine society, into Philippine politics? Meron bang ganon, nag-rebranding kayo or something?
Sa palagay ko, hindi naman talagang conscious effort or even any attempt at revisionism. I think all along, my brother and I have been working very quietly, very steadily at the different posts that we have held, whether as senator in his case, in my case, as governor, as congressman. We've just been plugging along, and perhaps the time has come because it's been over 30 years, and perhaps we have more perspective, more distance, and the points of view have changed. I think it's also been a question of our failure to tell our side of the story, not because we know better or that we want to pick a fight, but simply because the media has been so difficult in the past, we never really spoke up. And I think it's our duty to at least talk about the things that happened as we personally saw them, as we experienced them. This has been our failure, and certainly we should also tell our side of the story so that the new generations will hear a well-rounded version of history.
I can hear the reaction on social media right now. But anyway, Senator Amy Marcos, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Hope to see you again and your brother on this show very soon. Salamat. Thank you for being with us.
Yes,
more about
thank
the
you very
latest
much.
in 2022 when we return. This is Politics as Usual. Like I said earlier on the show, babalikan po natin si COMELEC spokesperson James Jimenez, Chairman Sharif Abbas, Commissioner Rowena Guanzon, and Antonio Co are stepping down very soon. Meron na po ba tayong idea, no? Sino ba yung papalit, or kung walang mga pangalan, if you don't want to share that with us, ano yung mga kailangan ng COMELEC? Abogado ba? IT expert ba? Manager? Someone who can, run things on the ground?
Well, sa ngayon, wala naman tayong idea kung sinong ipapalit ng Pangulo, no? And it's always been that way. The President really doesn't tell the COMELEC kung sinong gusto nilang gawin. I suppose at some point they will probably consult with the sitting commissioners, but again, all of that ultimately nasa prerogative ng Pangulo kung sinong i-appoint niya. Kung ano ang kailangan ng komisyon, well, that's a very good question. Marami nagsasabi, kailangan namin ng mga taong merong skills sa management at siguro sa pag-organize ng mga malawakang paggalaw ng mga tao at equipment at pag-oorganisa ng isang halalan, because a lot of people don't get it, but elections are actually a massive logistical exercise. You're making sure that all of the ballots get into the proper places and so on. So maganda kung merong ganyang klaseng abilidad yung ating
Of course, the spokesperson James Jimenez, ang daming questions about what the final ballot phase will look like. It depends on who's on the final list of candidates, computerization, campaign guidelines, voting day. But given the way this pandemic has taken a very surprising turn with the Omicron variant, is it possible that we will have more voting via email or virtual voting, or anong mga possible na pwede mangyari para meron pa rin tayong mataas na voter turnout?
Well, sa tingin ko malabo na magkaroon pa tayo ng alternative means of voting. No? I think the ship has sailed for that. Maganda sana kung nagawa yan dati, pero again, hindi nga nagawa ng batas. So, we're going to stick with the in-person voting pa rin.
Okay, pero and then extended voting hours, but you will not consider voting over like 2 to 3 days?
No, we're not looking at multiple days for voting. In fact, voting hours are expected to be around 12 hours, no, from 6 to 6. In some cases, probably around 6 to 7 pa nga, 6 to 7 in the evening. So we will continue with the voting process indefinitely hanggang sa may tao, but we are not planning on holding 2 or 3 days of elections.
So ang kailangan na lang gawin ng tao ay ng mga botante to make sure na hawak na nila mga voter ID, halimbawa voter documents, pag-isipan kung sino iboboto, and to check kung ano yung mga precinct number nila.
Yes, and kailangan dumating sila sa polling place by around 5:45. Yan na yung latest. Kasi pag wala ka ng around 5:45, baka hindi ka na mailista eh. And kung hindi ka mailista, hindi ka makakaboto all the way to the end.
Spokesperson, I was about to call you Commissioner. James Jimenez, spokesman for the Commission on Elections. Thank you very much for joining us at the start and at the end of the show. Thank you very much. Stay safe. We've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table or in a family reunion or in Viber groups and risk digital and other kinds of warfare. But we can talk about it here on this show, your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. I'm Pia Onsberry. See you back here next Tuesday, 8:30 p.m.